Hey guys, welcome back to New Shades, and in today's video, we will be testing Tasty's microwavable cinnamon roll. So Tasty made this video dedicated to the art of the cinnamon roll. The video includes 3 recipes, one for a 4-minute, a 40-minute, and lastly a 4-hour cinnamon roll. Now, it doesn't shock me that one can spend 40 minutes or even 4 hours on a cinnamon roll. What shocks me is how you could spend only 4 minutes. For the 4-minute recipe, they take a bunch of dough, pop it into a mug, and stick it in the microwave. While watching this video, I thought there was absolutely no way that food like this, cooked like that, could actually taste any good. So today, ironically enough, we're going to be testing whether or not this 4-minute recipe is actually worth your time. So first thing that Tasty does in their video is create the filling. For that, you'll combine a tablespoon of butter with 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and a teaspoon of cinnamon. Once the filling is fully prepared, the Tasty video moves on to make the dough. First, we're going to combine our wet ingredients. Into a medium bowl goes 1 egg, a tablespoon of granulated sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and finally 2 tablespoons of milk. Once thoroughly combined, we're going to add a 1.5 cups of pancake mix to the wet ingredients, then stir with a spoon to combine. Even after thoroughly mixing, my dough seemed a lot more crumbly than hers, so I decided I would add a splash of milk to maybe add some more moisture. Even after adding the milk, my dough still looked super crumbly, so I added another splash of milk. This time, however, I think I went a little overboard and I wound up overhydrating my dough. I decided I would try and fix my problem in the kneading phase, which happens next. After liberally flouring my work surface, I'm going to turn out my dough so that I'm able to start kneading. As stated earlier, I think I added a bit too much milk, so I'm going to try to work in as much flour as possible. As evident by the dough clinging to both my fingers and the cutting board, I seem to have completely overhydrated it. But not to worry, I was able to add enough flour to get it to a good consistency. Once we finish kneading, we are going to roll out our dough using a rolling pin into an 8 by 7 inch rectangle. Once you're done rolling it out, it's time to add your filling. I was really shocked about how much, or more accurately, how little filling there was for this cinnamon roll. Tasty had listed this recipe on their website, and comments under that recipe had also complained of the lack of filling. One of the comments that was rated most helpful by users recommended that you actually double the filling recipe, so I decided that I would double the recipe as well. After you've added all your filling, whether you've doubled it or not, it's time to roll up the cinnamon bun. I had a little bit of trouble at this step because my dough wound up sticking to the cutting board, but it wasn't an issue a knife couldn't fix. Once you're done rolling out the dough, we're going to take a knife and cut it in half as shown in the video to divide it into the 2 portions. So even though there was a little bit of a mishap with the dough sticking to my cutting board, I seem to have achieved a nice swirl. At this point, I'm glad I doubled the filling because I don't think I would have achieved that sort of swirl without it. Next, you're going to grease a microwave-safe mug with Pam. Then you're going to place one of your cinnamon rolls swirl side up inside of your mug. Repeat these steps with your other cinnamon swirl. Then you're going to add 1 teaspoon of water into each mug. They say they do this in the video because it's supposed to keep the cinnamon roll moist while in the microwave. Then 1 mug at a time, you're going to pop both of these things in the microwave for 1 minute and 45 seconds. Next, we're going to be making our icing, so you'll need 6 tablespoons of powdered sugar and 2 tablespoons of whole milk. Even after thoroughly mixing, again, this is not enough milk for my icing, so I added a splash more. Okay, so one of our cinnamon rolls completely failed. I mean, the butter and sugar mixture boiled over, it looks super lopsided, and we have no idea what the difference was between this mug and the other one, because the other one turned out fine. Okay, so here are my final thoughts. If you guys are wondering how this tastes, well, Umang and I are sort of divided on this. I thought it was fine, but Umang said it really just didn't taste good at all. He said the texture was like ancient bread. My main issue with this recipe is that it has many flaws. I'm nowhere near a professional cook or chef or baker or anything like that, so maybe some of the errors were a result of my personal flaws. However, my issue with these cinnamon rolls are problematic enough that I feel like the issues were due to error in the recipe. For one, you definitely need to double this filling. There's no way that minuscule amount of filling is going to fill this entire cinnamon roll. And I mean, there were obvious errors with the proportions in the dough that left me with this sticky, gooey, terrible mess in the end. And after reading the comments on the recipe, I can see that I'm far from the only one who has problems. For instance, this comment here specifically asks you not only to double the filling, but to completely change the proportions of the dough by adding a tablespoon of extra milk and reducing the amount of pancake mix. So even though I enjoyed making this recipe, I've got to be honest with you guys, I really recommend that you don't try this at home unless you're doing a different version of this recipe. Well, that's all for now, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you in our next video.